Holy shit, that was a loud clap. No! Over the past 5 years, I've despised the Assassin's Creed franchise. Since the new generation of consoles that came out in 2013, I feel like Ubisoft really dropped the ball with every release in some way or another. For example, AC Syndicate was a fine game, but it dragged on way too long. AC Odyssey was just wasted potential. AC Origins had the most bland environments with a more bland character. Valhalla completely missed the point of what an Assassin's Creed game is. And Assassin's Creed Mirage was so fucking dull that it made me miss the Prince of Persia series. And that's just the Assassin's Creed franchises. Don't get me started on everything else. However, there is I'd say a majority of people out there who have come to a consensus that Assassin's Creed Unity is the worst game that Ubisoft has released under that franchise, with almost everyone having some sort of opinion on it. Some say that it is good, although I haven't heard it that much, and most people say that it's absolute garbage. However, I take a different stance on this game. I know there are people out there who would completely disagree with me, and that's okay, even if you're wrong, but I actually don't feel the same way as everyone else does about Assassin's Creed Unity. There are a handful of people online who say the game is just as broken as it was at launch, which I can definitely confirm that that is not true at all. And that just makes me think that these people played it at launch and haven't even given the game the time of day since then. And these comments piqued my interest so much that I had to go out and buy the game again just to see if the game was really as shit as people say it is, or if everyone's seeing this through shit colored glasses. And to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised with what I played. I want to start off with the presentation because I believe it's one of the things that really holds up well. I think the game looks great with detailed characters and a well done, flushed out city with detailed interiors and exteriors. I believe this is actually the first game in the franchise that lets you freely walk around buildings and castles, and although by today's standards that's pretty tame, but at the time it was a big inclusion for the franchise. I know this sounds corny, but the setting of France does feel flushed out and really alive. For example, a handful of people creating a small group to riot, but as the game progresses, the locals of France spiral into depravity, with the small group increasing in size, so much so that these groups will drop your frame rate down to 2. That being said, it was ambitious, but from a technical standpoint, it does fall a bit flat. However, visually, I think it's done enough to win the coveted Green Tea Gold Star. Good job, Ubisoft. Onto the gameplay now, which is such a real interesting thing to talk about. I know at launch this game was a mess. Missing textures, shitty AI, irresponsive combat, constant frame rate drops, and glitches galore. I know people see this picture and then completely write the game off entirely, but the people who complained about this glitch, I guarantee did not play the game when it was at this state. Saying it's utter shit, but never experiencing this bug is just blasphemous. However, over time, many of these issues were fixed. Kind of. Even at the time of its last update, the game is still full of bugs which can definitely take you out of the game's immersion. There were a couple times where the game absolutely cracked it and then just crashed on me, but that was like once in a blue moon. The parkour and movement have been altered from its previous games, with the fast climb down and smoother and easier way to climb up structures. I don't think they quite perfected it at this point, but it was a huge improvement from Black Flag, which was a huge improvement from Revelations because the movement was a lot more fluent and a lot more fun to scale France. The combat was a step down from previous titles in my opinion. There were cool elements like the one-handed long and heavy weapons that continued from AC3 and Black Flag, giving the combat a little bit more variety and also giving a little throwback to AC2 and Brotherhood. There was also the inclusion of having multiple firearms, which was, although it didn't bring much to the table, there were a lot of different, varieties and looks of guns, which is kind of cool. That being said, the combat itself was bland. All kill animations were the same. Couldn't use a human shields for enemy gunfire. Instead, you had to roll out of the way. And even then, it was a low success rate. And I do think those little misfires made a big difference to the gameplay because it did eliminate that element of fun and felt like combat was more of a chore than anything. Skills were also hit or miss. There were basic skills that were locked, like environmental blending, roll-throughs when dropping from high places, to even dropping money pouches, which I felt was just dumb as fuck. I only ended up getting the environmental blending because the other two weren't worth the skill points. You can also acquire skill points through main missions and co-op missions, which when doing solo are a lot harder. So you do have to work for most of your skill points and prioritize what skills will be the most impactful to the way you play. The only new addition that I thought was great was the disguise skill. It got me out of so many tight spots and it made sense within the lore of the game because it still follows the Animus storyline and that the game still is a simulation of history and not history itself, so it can be manipulated. So yeah, thumbs up to that. Lastly, for the gameplay, I want to talk about the upgrade system. I thought that this was a really cool way to give Arno a unique identity through his outfit. Unlike previous game where armor changes slightly when upgraded, in Unity every piece of armor has a different aesthetic to pair with different abilities. You can prioritize one key element over another, with the key elements being stealth, health, range, and melee. And you can also add different colors to Arno's clothing if you don't like the way Arno looks. There's also outfits in the option menu which has classic costumes from previous games and a few new outfits specifically made for Arno. Alright, brave statements only. I'm going to say, I will die on a hill that Unity has one of the best stories in the franchise. You play as Arno Dorian, a man who joins the Creed after being framed, looking to avenge the death of Francois de Lasserre, Arno's foster father and father of love interest Elise de Lasserre, who are later revealed to be part of the Templar Order. Arno starts imprisoned as the French Revolution starts to take place with the storming of Bastille. While he is there, he meets an assassin named Pierre Belec, who becomes a mentor of sorts, and vows to bring you to the Creed once escaped from the prison. Arno joins the Brotherhood and is given the task to investigate the Templar Order, due to the two factions having a loose treaty that is slowly falling apart. Arno, however, has different motives. Following a lead, Arno ignores the Brotherhood's instructions and kills Templar Grand Master Lafreniere, which is later revealed to be an ally of the treaty, being one of the people who tried to warn de Lasserre about the plot that would later kill him.
What are you saying, Pisspot?
I had a lead on Lafreniere. I followed it, and I killed him.
Now the word is out that Arno betrayed the treaty, with the two factions no longer trusting each other. Elise, who only seeks the truth on who killed her father, goes to Arno, who takes her to the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood are weary of Elise, but in terms of the treaty, they accept the alliance. Belec is the only assassin who gives pushback, but the Brotherhood are like, "Fuck the British," and tell him to pipe down. Arno, Elise, and assassin Mirabeau, who is more like the top dog of the assassins in France, all meet together, but when Arno arrives, Mirabeau is dead, and the only one who's there is Elise. It's not Elise, by the way. Elise didn't kill him. But they put their heads together and track the assailant, who turns out to be Belec.
Betrayal.
He believes assassins and Templars should be enemies and that the peace treaty was doomed to fail the assassins. Yet Arno doesn't agree. With Belec out of the way, Arno and Elise continue to find Francois de Lasserre's killer, which is revealed to be a Templar named Germain, who had the same beliefs as Belec and wanted to return the Templar Order to its former glory. Germain, being the puppet master all along, continues to elude both Arno and Elise, which ends up driving a wedge between the couple.
You were given a golden opportunity to end his life and you refused to take it.
To save your life?
It isn't yours to save.
Ouch, bro. Wrap it up. She's for the streets now. This drives Arno into a drunken despair, which Elise gets him to snap out of it. Back on the trail, the two work together to finally take Germain down. He hides away at the top of a heavily guarded castle, which is actually quite easy to climb without being noticed. Arno gets the jump on Germain, or so he thought, because Germain found the Sword of Eden. And for some reason it has the ability to teleport the wielder, which is kind of shit. Arno catches him running down into the catacombs. The entrance is heavily guarded, which is also quite easily to run through. Conveniently, Elise is down there waiting for us, as we team up and look to game over Germaine. I found the boss fight to be insanely underwhelming because it's very repetitive and easy. All you have to do is run out of Germaine's sight and then climb above ground over one of like the ropes and then just do the same thing like 3 times, air assassinate him 3 times, and then that's pretty much it. I think the game was going for a similar boss fight to the Mr. Freeze boss fight in Batman Arkham City, where Freeze would learn from Ollie's mistakes so you couldn't do the same takedown twice.
I learned from my mistakes, Batman. You?
But with Germaine and Assassin's Creed Unity, the game is so incredibly broken that the rules don't apply in this situation. So I didn't even get hit. All I had to do was air assassinate him 3 times and then, yippee, final boss fight done. Anyways, he actually did end up hitting me in a cutscene, trapping Arno underneath rubble while Elise comes over to help. She sees a wounded Germaine and contemplates to help Arno with a chance of Germaine escaping or end it herself. Despite Arno trying to talk her out of it, Elise chooses the latter, bum rushing Germaine. But Elise made an oopsie because Germaine had the Sword of Eden. As time slows down, Arno rushes to break free and stab Germaine with the hidden blade, but he was 1 second too late. Elise goes crashing to the ground after being hit. Arno rushes over and holds Elise in his arms, as Elise starts to slowly fade. He then walks over to Germaine, delivering the final blow. The battle is over. To conclude, Arno continues to follow the Creed with a new understanding and purpose, to keep France safe, in memory of Elise de la Serre. I think this story is absolutely great for Assassin's Creed standards. The player grows with Arno from a cocky, immature little brat to a more structured and mature, mostly level-headed assassin. An assassin driven to take down the Templar Order, even though it began from selfish reasons. The love interest of Elise was a great inclusion who has similar qualities to Arno, which also change as the story progresses. I think if the game were to run a little longer and we had more missions involving Elise, the death of Elise would have held a lot more weight. Because it was built up quite good, but I did feel like it was missing that little bit more romance and connection to really punch it home. I know I didn't touch on it when talking about the story, but the assassin missions are also quite fun, giving you the freedom to rid your target however you please, giving you opening points and distractions if desired, which I almost never used. And I just want to say, fuck Marie Levesque's assassination mission. That bitch caught me every time I tried to kill her undetected. I would hide in crowds and she somehow would be able to pick me out and a shit ton of guards rushed me. In the end, I just got close enough while she was shaking hands at her party and I just ran up and stabbed her and ran out. It was so infuriating to the point where I thought I was playing a fucking Dark Souls game. This shit took me like 5 tries. I think that mission probably had something to do with how I viewed the other missions, because to me, every other mission was super easy compared to Marie Levesque's assassination mission. There isn't a lot of variety in the side missions, but my fucking god are there a lot of them. We have the classic side missions which can range from combat, trailing, stealth, stealing, the classic AC side mission shit. Or for something easier, there are also assassin contracts, which are just run down the street and either assassinate this guy, steal from that guy, or protect the assassin homie. There are also different varieties of chests. The white ones are the basic ones, red ones are guarded and requires the skill of lockpicking, and gold ones have more valuable stuff in them, and the blue ones, I don't really know. There are also rifts, which tie into the Animus part of the story, which allows you to travel through time to Paris, where you can collect rift points, and rift points help you with your upgrades. And I think it's incredibly ambitious to create a whole new environment just for these side missions. Even though you can't fully explore it, they're still wide enough to get a good view of the surroundings. So kudos, because that's low-key cool as fuck. This is the only thing I can't speak too much on, because I went through the whole game solo, and doing the co-op missions by yourself is actually really fucking hard. I was able to beat the easier ones, but the missions from keeping whoever the fuck from dying as you scale rooftops, taking out enemies, and doing it by yourself, is pretty damn hard. To conclude, I think Assassin's Creed Unity gets a good amount of hate that it doesn't deserve. Even the countless glitches or the one or two game crashes that I experienced throughout my playthrough wasn't enough to kind of justify this as a shit game. I do think the game has a lot to offer in terms of storytelling. I was more invested in Arno and Elise more than any of the characters to come after Unity. Both were engaging and were well flushed out characters. It still looks great for a game that came out in 2014, with the French Revolution being a near perfect setting for an Assassin's Creed game. But all I need to do is show this picture, and it shows that it's the only thing that people took out of the game. And for me, that is just insanely disappointing. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment what you thought of it, or what you'd like to see me cover next. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Why do I keep fucking saying that? Alright guys, latest.